Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. After that fascinating session on the Gulf, let's go a little beyond. Let's look at the Indian Ocean, and there's no other better expert than Ram Madhav, who's president of the India Foundation, prominent ideologue of the BJP and the RSS, who is, his expertise goes beyond any of these subjects. But Ram Madhav, we are sitting virtually at the gateway of India, the Indian Ocean. Kerala is that, Trivandrum is that, and yet it is not India's ocean. How can we make that difference? What do we need to do to leverage our position, our geostrategic interest in this region?
Okay, firstly, just as the South China Sea doesn't become China's sea, I don't claim that Indian Ocean should be India's ocean. That's not probably the right description about this great water body. But I must say that ever since this Indo-Pacific became a very prominent buzzword in the diplomatic circles, strategic circles and all, we forgot that Indian Ocean as an entity existed separately.
You said we forgot. Who forgot?
Including us.
The Modi government or...
No, I give you one example. In the last century,
right,
it was Europe and America which were in the driver's seat of the world's economy, right? European countries and the US. It used to be Pacific Atlantic. But the European countries knew that by themselves they were a powerful entity. So that's why they created European Union separately. They didn't simply call it we are a part of the Pacific Atlantic, where always America was the dominant power. So something like that is lacking in our region because after all, what is Indian Ocean? It is the world's third largest water body. And 30% of the world's economy is situated here. 80% of the energy trade happens through this region, 80%. And as far as India is concerned, 80% of all our trade happens through this region.
And 38 countries, am I right?
38 countries and 30% of the world's population, 2.7 billion
now,
people.
That's a very interesting thought. You are talking of an Indian Ocean Union. Is this the new policy or is it something that is your dreams only?
Earlier, some efforts were made to create a community out of this Indian Ocean region. We know about IORA, Indian Ocean Regional Alliance. They did not succeed for the important reason that somehow there is no pivot. After all, for this thing to succeed, you need a pivot. Now, why is Indo-Pacific becoming so prominent? Because there are 3-4 countries as pivot. There is one America, there is one Australia, there is one India, and there is one Japan. You formed a group called Quad. But when it came to Indian Ocean region, although there is a regional association, in IORA, not Alliance Association, but no country, Hindi mein kehte hain, mai baap nahi hai. It's like that. So probably.
But we have not only a BAP coming, but a very big BAP. We have seen what happened in China. They have created this string of pearls thing where they have ports now in Sri Lanka, Maldives, Djibouti, Laos, and apart from that, they have the maritime Silk Road, which they've built right across in terms of exactly the kind of the border, what's that called, the BRI initiative that China did. And they seem to be now capturing the Indian Ocean. More than India, it is going to become China's ocean if we don't watch out.
Oh, that is the important point that especially India must keep in mind and must acknowledge that neither China nor America is an Indian Ocean power. They're outsiders to the region. That doesn't mean they don't have any stakes. Every ocean, every country has stakes. But today, the competition, if not the conflict between these two powers, should not disturb the regional balance here. But unfortunately, what you are saying is the day-to-day reality. Their maritime Silk Road or maritime Belt and Road initiative has resulted in a major death trap for many countries in our neighborhood.
They call it debt diplomacy and you're calling it the debt trap.
Debt diplomacy.
Or a DEATH trap or is it a DEPT trap?
It was actually a debt diplomacy. That is how it is described by many strategic analysts in the world. But a time has come when Indian Ocean countries should come together. We host that annual Indian Ocean conference. There, our slogan is, countries from the Indian Ocean should become leaders of the Indian Ocean. Leaders from the Indian Ocean should become leaders of the Indian Ocean. 24 crore, 240 million people in Indonesia. Of course, we don't have good relations, but almost 200 million in Pakistan, 160 million in Bangladesh. We are, of course, the second or first largest country in the world now, 1.4 billion people. We're big countries here, but we are not at all, emphasizing the importance of this region standalone. We're part of Indo-Pacific. The moment you talk about Indo-Pacific, what comes to mind? Taiwan,
Right.
South China Sea.
All
The
the
conflict
battles over
between
there.
China and USA. They are important fights. I don't want to dismiss them. They are important challenges for global strategic community. But we have other challenges.
Let's deal with that. One of the things, if we want to project power in the Indian Ocean, is that the Indian Navy must get the prominence it should get. Currently, it is probably, in terms of the budget, the poor cousin of the entire armed forces. Secondly, we should have at least, Navy power that is around 200 ships. We have about 100 ships and submarines, I'm talking in general. That had to be beefed up considerably. Are we on the way? Because without that, we are not a force to reckon with.
Oh, yes, sure. One of the requirements is, of course, to have a strong blue water navy. There's no doubt about it. And we have neglected it after independence for many years because we were seized of challenges, land-based challenges, from Pakistan on one side and China on the other side. We did not see much challenge coming from the ocean side, so we probably not paid enough attention. But I must tell you, in the last 8-9 years, especially after Prime Minister Modi started paying attention to this naval, equipping India's naval strength, India's navy has grown substantially. In fact, the number of vessels have now almost doubled in the last 10 to 15 years. We are growing as a strong blue water navy. Today we do maritime exercises with 18 countries, including at a limited level, even including our adversaries. So we are now doing more and more exercises, more and more presence is there. But please remember, when we are talking about Indian Ocean, it's not just from the military or naval perspective. That's why I mentioned, it's a huge trade. It happens here. Ecological questions are there. Maritime challenges are there. Countries face, these are all post-colonial countries. They have their own experience with colonial powers. But where do they turn to? Today, we are talking about Global South. What is Global South? It's the Indian Ocean. It's the ocean in the Indian Ocean and to a little extent in the Pacific Island region. Together, we are 58 countries. If you add Pacific Ocean countries and these Indian Ocean regional countries, we are 58 countries. Biggest group.
But, it's nice to say all that, but when it actually comes to policy and implementation, okay, you're saying Navy, there's been an effort to beef up. Take a look at our Far East or East, look East policy. We said act East. We have not even built a road starting from our northeast to Singapore or Thailand or any of those places. We are struggling to get it past Myanmar. What are we doing? We seem to think big, but we act small. What do we need to do?
Okay, definitely there is some problem with our strategic mindset. We were also a colonized country. Ideally, we should be anti-colonial in our mindset. But our mindset continues to be colonized, even after we became independent. So we are still very fascinated with, what we call as westward ho. We are very happy dealing with the Western world.
Right.
So that is why at some point, Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee had to step in and say, now let us turn attention to the East. That is when this whole issue of, it started with P.B. Narasimha Rao, but then it became Act East under Vajpayee. Has enough happened? I would say no. But there is definitely now a realization that our future, our destiny is very invariably linked to the east of our geography, no longer to the west of our geography. Because ASEAN, countries in our neighborhood, are beyond that is Indo-Pacific, there is Australia, there is Japan. These are the countries with which India's future in this century at least, in the 21st century at least, is tied completely. So now there is an there is an effort to increase, our activities in this region. Prime Minister Modi, when he went to Singapore for the Shangri-La dialogue, there he declared that we recognize ASEAN's centrality in Indo-Pacific region. So we are recognizing the importance of ASEAN. By the way, ASEAN, those 10 countries, next 5 to 10 years' time, if we don't grow beyond them, they will become the world's third largest economy. Right. They may become 4 if we become 3, but it will be between our 2 of us.
Don't we think, I mean, we talked of the Indian Navy, the shortcomings, and you're saying it's trying to be made up. You've talked of now the government's focus trying to build connectivity across land connectivity at least. But really, the Indian Ocean is about sea connectivity. You have to have the ports. You have to have the ships. If to conduct trade, I mean, you talked earlier of the fact that this contributes 30% of the world's GDP. What are we doing about that? You have to have, efficient ports that move goods quickly, just as roads are trying to do now. Shipping is not living up to it. What has this government done, or what do you think needs to be done?
Actually, substantial work is happening in that region also. We are also building ports. We are building ports now in Bangladesh, in Myanmar, Maldives. We have anyway already a good base. In Mauritius now we got permission to build a big port in one of the islands. We are also expanding our footprint in this region by way of port building. It's another matter that China has been far ahead of us. They started this activity some 20 years ago. So they built a number of ports around us, which is called String of Pearls. We built one Chabahar, but before we started Chabahar work, they started Gwadar. So there is an inherent competition between us. But yes, India is now trying to at least catch up. We are also increasing our presence, our activity. That's why I said we have a number of countries in the region with whom we now have good maritime connectivity. We have established maritime connectivity. Our navies can make port calls at many, many ports. Today we have that kind of relationship, thanks to the new proactive approach that Prime Minister Modi or this government is taking.
Take trade, for instance, or trade agreements. We have had just an agreement with UAE, free trade agreement happening in Australia. What do we need to do? If you have to look at it, we rejected the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. The RCEP didn't want to join it. There was a lot of people saying we should have, because if we need to have influence on this area, that is a trade agreement. Others differ and say, no, bilateral is better. Where do you stand on this debate?
There was a time when we were, we were not comfortable with some such arrangements in the neighborhood. One of them was RCEP. I was one of those people who said that probably that decision could have been different. We could have probably joined and then wielded our power inside RCEP. But that's okay. There was a situation in which a decision was taken.
Is the door still open, or should we shut it fully? Where do we stand on RCEP?
Now we have moved on, because now there is Quad-led new economic arrangement coming into place in that region.
And that is called Indo-Pacific.
IPEF, Indo-Pacific Economic Framework.
Right.
Which is coming into place. There probably we are a part of that framework. We will play a greater role there. But having said it, you are right. After a gap, we have, Prime Minister Modi's government came into power in 2014.
Right.
The first free trade agreement happened only last year. It took 7 years to actually do the first free trade agreement. But that free trade agreement happened with UAE.
Right.
It shows that now there is that realization that the neighborhood, earlier session was about these GCC countries, Gulf and all that. We now attach a lot of importance to our relationship with those countries, and today we have best of the relations with GCC countries. Again, they are also a part of Indian Ocean region. Yes, that is the new focus, new attention now of the government.
There seems to be a mismatch between our ambition and our capabilities. I mean, if you look at it, the 3 areas that we talked about, we have this ambition, let's do Far East, but we go slowly on it. We have this ambition of being an Indian Ocean power, but our Navy falls short of it. We want to do trade, but we are hesitant. We always have this, we haven't overcome the hesitations of history. Maybe there weren't hesitations earlier if you looked at, what do we need to do? Is it time now, as you said earlier, an Indian Ocean Union? Is it time to have a multidisciplinary maritime organization that actually which India heads? Where do we need to take the initiative, and what do we need to do in the years ahead?
I would say there is no longer any hesitation.
Okay.
You are right. We used to be called a very reticent and hesitant nation when it comes to dealing with our neighbors and all that. But that hesitation is no longer there. But Whether we have that required, deep pocket is the question. I mean, it's all about how you support the countries in the region. Almost majority of the countries in the region are developing countries. Their needs, economic needs, their trade needs, their other needs are quite a substantial burden. If India wants to, I give you one example. India offered certain amount of aid to Bangladesh. Naturally, we are neighbors, we always help each other, we extended it. Less than 1 year, China stepped in, offered 3 times more aid. Now, can we do that? Can we compete in that way? That challenge will remain. But one very good thing is, all these countries are very comfortable dealing with India. The reason is, we are not just maritime neighbors or land neighbors. We have a long historical, civilizational, cultural bond that connects Indonesia to Saudi Arabia. I mean, there was this talk that Arab sailors, traders came to Kerala coast. They did not come only to Kerala coast. They went further down to Indochina, the Bali, all these islands. So we are all connected through history, through civilization, through our religions, through our cultures. That makes India a good soft power.
But without money, we have a problem.
So states like Kerala should help us,
But coming to another issue, okay, we have seen China, an aggressive China, and that is not restrained to our border. We have seen, as you said, China has extended its jurisdiction right across to the Indian Ocean, Pakistan, Djibouti, all these countries that we mentioned earlier, Lanka, and even Bangladesh, they've done that. What do we need to do to counter China? One of the things, let's ask that, and then I'll come to the next question.
Yes, China has been a strategic challenge to India for actually many decades now. It has tried to encircle us, that so-called string of pearls. The ports that they built were all around us. They basically tried to cripple Indian Navy from its ability to operate in the high seas by building ports all around us. It continues to be a challenge, and unlike us, they have deep pockets. We do not know whatever, but they are able to attract countries into sort of whether you call it debt diplomacy or debt trap. So that continues to put a lot of pressure on India. As we talk, the Chinese are already building railroads into many of our neighboring countries. They built railroads into Thailand, they are building railroads into Laos, they are building railroad into Vietnam, they are building railroad into Nepal, in our neighborhood. So they are aggressively courting or cultivating India's neighborhood or Indian Ocean neighborhood. Therein definitely lies a strategic challenge to India. Because in the long term, we are rivals in this region. We should become friends, ideally, but that's not the situation at the moment.
One of the things is that we thought by having military and other strategic relations with America, the US would come and we could be combining our forces. But it seems the US is doing its own thing. It is now becoming, Indian Ocean is becoming, rather than a India, China, US playground, it is becoming US-China playground. And there is this, what they call the Goldilocks phenomenon. We want US to some amount, but we don't want them to take ports and do their own thing. They're going independently of us. How do we handle this situation now?
Okay, in a globalized world, obviously we can't say that this is my region, you don't come in, obviously. And countries like America are big countries, they have their own strategic interests, they do undertake their own activities, they do have their own mission, their own targets and all that. But we always tell our American friends one thing, this we convey to them privately, also sometimes in conferences, whether they like fully or not. We say that, you see, when it comes to India's neighborhood, which country is more trusted? If I may ask a frank question, is it India or US? You put it to a test in the neighborhood. I mean, you ask Vietnam, you ask other countries, you ask any country in the region, they will immediately say India. Because there is a history. Because of that history, India commands more respect. So, ideally, because India and USA share many things, ideologically, perception-wise, we are all committed to building strong democratic and free world. India should get the front line role when it comes to dealing with neighborhood at least. So the US should actually think that India, here is India, which is ready to sail with me. Why not allow India's views to prevail? Sometimes that doesn't happen, unfortunately.
Now, a leading US strategist who's of Indian origin, Ashley Tellis, said, America is having a bad bet with
Bad
India.
bet.
Right?
India is a bad bet.
India is a bad bet for America. What is your views on that?
Okay. Maybe the heading and the content inside were slightly different. He was, somehow that heading immediately invokes a negative response from all of us. In the content, what he tried to say was that, probably there is a mismatch, a disalignment between what America is intending to do in the region and how far India would like to go, not can go. India would like to go. Maybe India would not like to go whole hog with America in achieving America's strategick objectives.
No, but
that's
what is
his
your
point.
view? Do you think we should now, knowing what has happened between China and Russia, should we now tilt strongly towards the US, get into what they call the NATO plus that is there? Is that time ripe for India to do that?
No, that is an absurd proposition. First of all, this whole idea that now Indo-Pacific should become NATO plus, or it should become Indo-Pacific NATO, Quad should become Indo-Pacific NATO, I'm sure India is in total disagreement with any such proposition. Quad, as far as India is concerned, is an economic alliance, a trade alliance, a people-to-people alliance, but not definitely a military alliance. So if there is that expectation, which Ashley sounded in his article, as if India should become a military partner, you use the word NATO plus, some people started writing that India should become a part of NATO plus, etc. But as far as India is concerned, definitely look at India's 75 years of independence history. Have we become a part of any military alliance? Forget now. Any government did it in the past? Then why is that expectation coming that suddenly we will become a part of a military alliance? No, India is, its temperament is not for it. India will be a part of any UN-assigned peace alliance. We will go to any country to establish peace, but UN mandated, not US mandated. So that is India's temperament. So if Ashley expects that is a bad bet, so it be. India should be understood. India is an important power in this region. India is a frontline power when it comes to Indian Ocean region. That has to be acknowledged by countries like USA.
We have about 2.5 minutes. I know your expertise is in various regions, whether it's Kashmir, Northeast, and since Kaushik is here somewhere, he might be interested in asking this particular question, but I don't see him here, I'll ask it on his behalf. Take a look at what is happening in Manipur. The clash between the Métis and Kukis. You have had, I think, 90% of the deaths. How many deaths? 81% people have died. The maximum number of them are Kukis. You've had Mr. Amit Shah go there, spend 3 days, and yet that situation doesn't seem to resolve itself. What needs to be done in your opinion? You're the expert. You built the BJP's Northeast policy.
Firstly, everybody must understand that problem in Manipur is not a religion problem, as some tried to project it as though it is a clash between Hindus and Christians. No. It is not a tribal versus non-tribal problem. It's all about land. A state with meager plains territory. Valley is a very small part of the state. 10% of Manipur is valley. 90% of it is hills. And this 10% of the valley is home to 60% of the people. That is where the whole clash happens. Out of the 60% living in the valley, 90% are Maiteyis, who happen to be mostly Vaishnavite Hindus. But that is, by the way, that is one of their identities. The problem is, people from the hills trying to come down and take possession of the land because valley is open. Whereas hills are controlled by separate hill acts, hill laws. There, nobody from valley can go and buy land, whereas valley people can come down. So this has been a reason, a source of tension between people in the hills and in the valley. I must tell you something else. In the hills, Kukis are one big community, tribal community, and another big community is Nagas. And Kukis and Nagas again had this problem. Which hill belonged to whom? And I tell you, 2003, there was a massive violence in which almost 200 people died. 200. This time, deaths were about 80, 85. Every single death is bad. Nobody should die for such reasons. But just to understand, the challenge is how do you manage this, this economic imperative of finding good place to live and all that. So we always had these tensions. I handled that state. When we formed our government in 2017, there was an active standoff, active blockade going on from hills to valley. Everything to valley has to come through the hills. The people in the hill people have blocked the road because they wanted to take some revenge on the people in the valley.
So what do you think needs to be done
so
now?
We managed to do a great effort in finding a solution through dialogue, through talks, to pacify them, to give them what they needed.
Now what do you think we should do?
Remember, this is nothing anti-India in this. Even the hills people are strongly Indian.
No, what do we need to do
So
right now?
what we need to do is, when such situations arise, we need to be more proactive in tackling them before they become such big challenge today. The goodwill that has been built after a great effort has gone today. Again, the two communities, Maitais and Kukis, have become great enemies today.
This is all
I don't know how long it will take place. Yes, some efforts have been made, but better efforts could have happened.
So that is right under the BJP watch, the government, right?
Yes,
the BJP government watch, that you said so. But, what do we need to do now? What would you say now?
Home Minister was there. He held closed-door discussions with groups in the valley, groups in the hills. So today there appears to be the appreciation on both sides that we should not quarrel anymore. Probably we should slowly find a solution. Today the hills people demand that they need a separate hill council with all the powers. There is hill council. There are 6 hill districts in Manipur. They have their own hill councils and they get elected. Unfortunately, elections have not taken place. That's another reason. You always should have an elected government in place to actually diffuse tensions.
Right.
When you don't form it, and when state runs the districts also, there is bound to be.
So you're saying hold the elections quickly?
We should hold district elections, district hill council elections, give power to the local people. Some such measures are also needed, but I think Home Minister has spent a lot of time there, and things are now returning to normalcy.
Madhav, we've run out of time. We could speak from the ocean right up to the hills of Northeast, and I'm sure we missed Kashmir. But thank you very much, Madhav. And let's give him a very warm round of applause for this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.